Korean musicals have made it into the world's top theater districts, Broadway in New York City and the West End in London. Today, in our Culture Issue segment, we will take a deeper look into Korean-made musicals and their potential to captivate a broader global audience. And to do that, we are joined by culture critic Professor Chie Hye-won at Kyung University's Arts and Cultural Management program. Welcome, Professor Chie.
Hello, good to see you.
So, Professor Chie, let's begin with recent Korean musicals that entered the global stage, and not just any stage, Broadway and West End. So these are places that are dubbed as the home or the epicenter of musicals.
Right.
So which K musicals are we talking about here?
Yeah, actually there have been several musical theaters reaching out into the global stages for the past 10 to 15 years. But until recently, the markets are somewhat limited within the Asian countries. But however, in a couple of years, the Korean musical theater industry has got a remarkable achievement, not only in Asia, but also in a larger market, such as the London's West End or the Broadway in New York City. Earlier this year, the Korean musical Marie Curie performed in London and ran from June to July at the Charing Cross Theatre, which was originally created and premiered in 2018 in Seoul, here in Seoul. And the show adapted in English with the local creators and performed by English actors. Besides London, the show has been introduced to Asian markets, including China and Japan, and of course also to Curie's homeland, Poland, 2 years ago. Also, there is a Broadway show, The Great Gatsby, produced by a Korean producer, Shin Chun-soo, opened in last spring. The show premiered in the US, so not in Korea, but it is actually the first Broadway show mainly produced by the Korean producer. More recently, on October 16, last week, another key musical, Maybe Happy Ending, just started its previews on Broadway at Belasco Theater. The show was premiered in 2016 in Seoul. It has revived several times as one of the steady-selling musicals here in Korea. And the English version of the show was introduced to the US audiences for the first time at Atlanta's Alliance Theater in 2020, and finally became the first Korean original musical opens on Broadway.
Wow, what an achievement.
That is amazing. So, as Maybe Happy Ending is the most recent one, how has the response been to that?
Actually, the show had just started its previous last week, so it's kind of early how the theater goers in New York City like the show. But the show is supposed to officially open in November. But I can definitely say the trial performances in Atlanta, it was well acclaimed by both the critics and audiences. And the Broadway industry has been very much interested in the show, including producers, actors, and even the investors. So I believe the show would be a very unique show on Broadway as well. It's actually a smaller show with only 3 cast members on stage, and it tells a story about the 2 helper robots, which were created to help out the people, but abandoned by their owners. So Oliver and Claire, and it contains a pretty strong theme in it and universal theme in it. So I think the Broadway audiences will love the show.
We hope so. And Professor Chie, just for clarification, so what defines a Korean musical or a K musical? Because we hear some very international names of titles of the musical. So is it if a Korean producer produces the musical, or in other cases we have the story being Korean? So could you clarify that a little bit for our viewers?
Yeah, sometimes it's confusing, right? So like a K-pop industry, we don't actually restrict the Korean musicals have to be created only by Korean artists. So for instance, the Maybe Happy Ending, it was written by Korean writer Park Chun-hyu and composed by American composer Will Aronson. So they collaborated together. So at this point, we rather define Korean musical as a show were developed and premiered in Korea by the Korean producers and actors.
Oh, I see.
But that's the definition at this point. So because I guess the definition would be changed it would be different as things change because the theatrical work is all about the collaboration. So international co-work would be growing, I think. So maybe someday, I mean, the definition would be changed with a new Korean musical boundaries with the international collaborators and producers and investors all together.
Right, and we also have K-pop groups where we have many international members these days.
Yeah, of course.
So a lot of
Yes.
collaboration,
Yes.
right?
Sounds very exciting. So the musicals you mentioned earlier had already been a success here in Korea. So are we seeing an improvement in the development of domestic musicals over the recent years?
Actually, the theater market in Korea had a hard time during the COVID-19 pandemic, like any other cultural markets. But it has been recovered relatively fast. So there are many existing and brand new shows playing all around the year here in Korea, especially the Korean original musical, not the locally licensed production of foreign countries. The Korean original musical have been continuously growing for the past 10 years, including the larger scale shows such as like Frankenstein or The Man Who Laughs, or the smaller shows, the Red Book, Inside William, Let Me Fly, Frida, of course, Maybe Happy Ending, and Marie Curie, and many others. So behind the rapid growth, there are many younger creators and producers work together to find more audiences in the age of digital media. So it's not easy to find the audiences, but they are trying to find more audiences. And the government support has always helped a lot to Korean musical theaters to reaching out to the global markets.
Then, Professor Chie, going back to the Korean musicals recognition abroad, what's appealing to the international audience? So what stories maybe seem to be resonating with the audience abroad?
One of the strongest part would be the authentic story with a universal theme in it. However, for even the well-known stories of the famous people like Marie Curie or Frida Kahlo, the original musical, I think in the original musical, they have the unique approaches to the storytelling by Korean artists, and that part is appealing to the global audiences, I guess.
And the year 2024 really seems to be the year that the Korean musical market has expanded abroad because of Broadway and the West End, as you mentioned. So are there maybe any other K musicals that are already being planned to come out, to debut soon?
Many producers are trying to reach out to the global markets. As long as I know, in this year or in next year, in a couple of years, 3 more musicals, Red Book, You and It, and Inside William have been trying to reach out to the UK markets. And later this year, a new musical, Blue Blind, will be introduced to the New York market.
I'm very much looking forward to that.
And just one last question, Professor. What are the tasks ahead for K musicals to succeed globally?
In order to succeed globally, I think the most important thing is for the producers and artists is understanding the different market and the audiences, like their different tastes or their needs or everything and the cultural backgrounds. So they branching out into the global market. Another important thing is a closer partnership with the local professionals. So it's not just translating the story, it's just adapting the story in English. So the backgrounds, they have to understand the cultural background and audiences first, I guess.
I'm very excited about the
too.
future of Korean musicals expanding further abroad. So thank you very much, Professor Chie, for your insight today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Walter, for today. I'll see you back on Wednesday.
Wednesday, yes. See you then.